On this episode of Ham Nation, YL's Do It All.
Ham Nation is brought to you from LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether they're working in the office or remote. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of Ham Nation is brought to you by Icom. For more information, visit icomamerica.com/hamnation.
This is Ham Nation, episode 456.
For June 3rd, 2020.
Ham's Gone YL'd 3.0.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ham Nation, episode number 456. But guess what? It's not Bob at the helm tonight. It's not Gordo at the helm tonight, nor George, nor Don. It's us girls. We've got Ladies Night 3.0 going on. So let's send it over to Val and see what she's got for this evening.
That's right. It's Ham's Gone YL'd 3.0, but not too wild because I could break a hip at my age. You never know. We've got, I don't know how we managed to do it, but we've got, besides Amanda and myself, there's 5 amazing ladies with us tonight. So you're going to want to stick around and make sure you stick around to the end because we've got Dr. T who's going to be joining us live, and she'll be there at the end for your chat room questions. But don't send them to Amanda yet, because we're going to be busy going back and forth, and she's not going to have a chance to look at the chat room. But we'll let you know when you can start sending us your Dr. T questions. And also want to give a shout out to Jeff. Victor could not TD tonight's show. He had to stay. He's under they have a curfew where he's at. So Jeff's going to be TDing the show tonight. So hopefully we're not going to work you too hard, Jeff. And one last thing I wanted to say. It was our anniversary, mine and Jerry's 2-year anniversary, and look at what my wonderful husband got me. Ooh, pretty. And it's so heavy. It's beautiful. It's got a lot of nice weight to it. Beautiful piece of equipment there. So I'm all excited about that. I'll have to get my wrists ready for straight key night and New Year's. Plenty of time to warm up for that. So that's make sure you stick around. A lot of good stuff, a lot of amazing YLs all night long. Back to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Val. And the funny thing is that we have so many different aspects of ham radio that all of us ladies are doing this evening and talking about. It's going to blow your minds. While we're giving some thanks, just moving on with Jeff again, thank you for TDing tonight. He also does This Week in Google and GizBiz, I think, with Dick DiBartello. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yes, Dick DiBartello.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And the other thing I'd like to say thank you for is WTWW. Thank you so much for streaming us live on your shortwave stations. You can check that out on 5085, I believe. Thanks again to Ted Randall and Holly and the whole group there for keeping their stations up and running. And we really appreciate you streaming us. Again, shortwave leads right into AM talk. So I'm going to talk about some ladies that are on AM. This is pretty cool. Bob turned me on to AM. I participated in the AM rally back in, I think it was February, and gave it a shot. And he talked me through it and all this good stuff. And he said, get on there, just do it. People will say hi to you. Well, these ladies, and I'm going to mention her, Carey, KC2UFU. We couldn't have her on this evening, unfortunately, because of schedule conflict. But she started hosting a ladies' night AM net. And she does this on Saturday nights. And she's on the East Coast, so you're most likely able to join in if you're on the East Coast. But I would like to encourage everyone to maybe pick this up and start listening. And Jeff's got a little bit of video he's going to show us. Maybe, Jeff, about like 1 minute of that or so. It might be pretty light audio, so you might have to crank it up a bit, Jeff.
Oh, boy, Phil's going to have a sugar rush. Ooh, spaghetti carbonara. Phil's favorite.
Now this gal, I'm going to talk over a little bit. She's been taking these check-ins, and these gals talk about anything from what they made for dinner to what they're planning on for the weekend or what they were going to do for Memorial Day weekend. But look at those beautiful signals on AM. And we'll go ahead and listen here a little bit more. She's taking some check-ins now.
Hello to Mrs. VJB. Hello, Miss Pam. Are you there? KC2UFU.
Hey there. Yep, this is Pam from WA3VJB. And yeah, we just finished dinner. I was afraid that we were going to be
again, a beautiful signal right there.
While we were talking, but we just finished up. We're battling some kind of gnats out here. We're sitting out on the deck, which is like the first time we've done it this season, maybe the first or second time. And we're battling some kind of gnats, but that's okay because we both have a nice beverage here.
Citronella candle.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
I bought a brand new citronella candle, but it doesn't seem...
I really had to, I was so proud of these ladies. There's about 5 or 6 of them right now that get involved in this net. And they do have some wonderful conversations now. It's fairly entertaining for most of it. But I just kind of wanted to promote it. A lot of us are not on AM, and you heard how beautiful that signal was. When was the last time you were on 80 meters, Val, on SSB and had it sound that good? Exactly.
A lot of static on 80.
That's right. So join them. And let's not forget a couple of things. The AM window is at 3870, between 3870, and 3890. And the other thing definitely to remember, the older the rig that you use, the more street credit you get for joining them on AM. So just keep that in mind. All right.
Wait, does that happen in real life too? The older you are, the more street credit?
It actually could. Listen, we had Cliff on last week who was almost 108. He has more street credit than any of us put together. So it could happen. All right. Well, Val has a very great guest tonight, and I'm really looking forward to this one. Anne has, speaking of street cred, she has a lot of it. QST just did an article on her not too long ago. So, Valerie, take it away and introduce us to Anne.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, cool stuff on AM. That's one thing I haven't conquered yet. I want to try AM. But yeah, I'm joined tonight by Anne, KC9YL. What's nice about Anne, I run into Anne all the time. We always bump into each other at various conventions and stuff because she's a fellow Ninelander. And we're also both on the board of the Society of Midwest Contesters group. And so we see each other quite often or email each other quite often. So welcome aboard, Anne, KC9YL. Now, Anne, I know your husband isn't a ham, which is pretty rare to have a YL who's the ham but not the OM. So why don't you kind of tell everybody how you got involved in the hobby?
Okay, thanks, Val, and thanks for having me on tonight. Well, I grew up in Northeast Wisconsin on a farm with no real knowledge of ham radio at all. In February of 2011, my friend KE8IL sent me a link on Facebook. Their Marquette Repeater Association was streaming the audio on their club's webpage of hams working the checkpoints of the UP 200 sled dog race in Michigan. I listened to the hams passing traffic for a couple of hours, and the next day Mike was chatting and suggested that I get into ham radio. I said I didn't know anything about electronics and didn't know Morse code, and I figured that the equipment was probably pretty big and expensive. So I checked out a copy of the Now You're Talking book from the public school library where I worked and started reading about bouncing signals off the moon and talking to the International Space Station. So I thought that was pretty intriguing. I started going to the Aries local club meetings and became licensed in May of 2011 as KC9UHH. I bought a $35 HT and had to walk about a mile up to the nearest interchange on the highway so that I could hit the repeaters and check into the local nets. I borrowed a dual band rig from a club member and bought a mag mount antenna and stuck a broiler pan in my basement, and that's how I operated. For field day, the club set up 2 stations at our local Red Cross office. They had a script written out for me, and after about an hour, I finally got brave enough to make a contact. The first one with a station in Michigan, and then I talked to a station in Ohio, and I thought that was pretty cool. I think I'm going to have to upgrade my license. So by October of 2011, I passed my general. I bought an Icom 735 from my eye doctor and put up a G5RB Junior. So 9 years later, I have KC9YL, vanity call sign. I'm amateur extra with VE credentials. I still use the G5RB, but I also have a beam on top of a 34-foot tower. I've got worked all states. My DXCC count is 145. I've taken CW Ops levels 1 and 2, and I'm working pretty hard to get my speed up. I enjoy QSL cards and enjoy contesting and working special event stations. I was looking for a hobby to take me into my retirement years, and I must say I've made a pretty good choice.
I think you have too. And you've definitely kept really busy with this hobby, and it's really nice to find other YLs so active in the hobby. Now, I know you're also very active in a bunch of clubs, SMC being one, and I know you're really active in the YLRL. So for those who don't know that much about it, why don't you kind of tell everybody a little bit about what the YLRL is all about?
Okay, thanks. First, we'll start out with a little bit of history so that people can have a little bit of an idea what the group is. We celebrate our 81st year this year in 2020. And it started out with a letter from Ethel Smith, W7FWB, and later K4LMB. She was published in the July 1939 QST, asking YLs to contact her. And she got 12 responses, and the Young Ladies Radio League was formed in September of 1939. There were district chairwomen from each call district that were appointed, and in November, the first newsletter was published. In 1940, Anita Bine, WATAY, submitted the YLRL slogan, QRB, I am ready, and the first YL nets were scheduled. 3/4 of those original members operated CW and spent most of their time rag chewing. So the war years for YLRL, first of all, with amateur radio operations suspended, the YLs taught CW in theory and supported the Red Cross during those years. Knapp was the only female AARS radio aide, and Viola Grossman served with the Signal Corps. Helen, KC6TW, was employed with the 9th Signal Corps in Oahu and sprang into action when Pearl Harbor was attacked. By 1950, the YLRL had developed contests to encourage more participation in the YLs. The first international convention was held in June of 1955 in Santa Monica, California. National conventions continue to be held every 3 to 4 years, with the most recent being held in 2018 in Oklahoma City, and I was lucky enough to be able to attend that one. YL members range in age from preteens to 100-year-olds, with approximately 400 members currently worldwide from 35 different countries. Many DX members have their dues sponsored by YLs in the U.S. and Canada, and some of those DX adoptees then also sponsor their U.S. counterpart memberships in their countries. And YLRL continues to sponsor contacts, newsletter, certificate, nets, and scholarships. Okay, the next 2 slides list some of the more popular nets, and they're listed right on the YLRL website. There's organized nets that run Monday through Friday. Some are in the evenings in the U.S. and some during the day. There are HF nets and Echolink nets and DMR, since that's becoming quite popular. There are some DMR nets popping up as well. Through the nets, I've met ladies from other parts of the world, and I'm a frequent check-in to the Thursday night Echolink net, as well as Echolink nets in Tennessee, and there's an India COVID net that just began, and I've been checking into that regularly. Participation in the Wednesday night HF net is sometimes difficult because of band conditions, but the Thursday night Echolink net continues to be very popular. Catherine, AC4YL, hosts this net, and YLs who do not have adequate antennas or HF equipment are able to check in from all over the world. And we frequently have DXYLs checking in on a regular basis. So on Friday and Saturday, Hamvention weekend, we weren't able to go to Dayton. So we decided to have a YL Hamvention happy hour. Catherine, AC4YL, and I hosted a Zoom YL. The first 10 minutes included a virtual W8BI DARA clubhouse tour where we shared pictures from last year's visit to the clubhouse. Even using this free Zoom version and getting booted out every 40 minutes, we had 27 ladies checking in on the Friday night session and 38 check-ins on Saturday. We hope to host another one in June, and during last weekend's Day of the YL contest, there were several impromptu Zoom meetings that popped up, another way for members to contact. So, awards and certificates. This year for 2020, the theme is Friendship Award, Your Favorite Bird. So it's a year-long contest. You contact 15 YLs and exchange your favorite bird and your QTH and signal report, and then you can get the certificate at the end of the year. Previous themes have been books and movies, and some of the certificates that the YL offers are more challenging, such as the YLCC, which is 100 YL contacts, but some are geared towards a more casual operator, like the Friendship Award, and you can exchange contacts using other modes, such as Echolink. So here is a sneak peek at the cover of the May-June issue, which is going to be our premier first electronic version of the newsletter. The job of the district chairs is to solicit articles of interest from the YLs in their call area and then forward them to the editor. Each issue is filled with stories from YLs around the world, and Michelle W5MQC has worked tirelessly uploading the old harmonics issues, which will soon be available as well online. Scholarships. The YLRL sponsors 3 memorial scholarships each year for a total of $5,000. Recipients must be licensed hams and seeking a bachelor's or graduate degree at a U.S. college or university. And in the corner, we have Ann WB1ARU, who had a special collection for the scholarships at the 2018 National Convention. Our website was completely revamped last year, becoming more user-friendly and having a much more modern look. We added PayPal so that members can pay their dues online, order merchandise online, and also make scholarship donations. And we have a Facebook page. Facebook Messenger is used quite often with the chat, and we have a growing presence on Twitter. So last slide. Number one purpose of YLRL is to encourage and assist YLs around the world, whether it's operating special event on a World War II submarine, providing support at the Boston Marathon, setting up antennas for field day, or serving as an officer of a local club. We support and encourage each other so that we can better enjoy the hobby, provide a network to increase our knowledge, become better operators, offer encouragement and friendships to YLs around the world. You go to our homepage, YLRL.org, and on the Join Our Amazing Organization banner, there is an arrow that you just click, and that'll take you to the membership page. You fill out the application, and you can either save it as a PDF and fill it out and email it, or print it out and mail it in to the treasurer. I am the DX treasurer, so I take care of anything outside of North America. And the U.S. receiving treasurer takes care of all the registrations for Canada and the U.S. Membership dues are $15 per year, and with that you get the bi-monthly newsletter, which is filled with articles from YLs around the world. You'll have access to the archive newsletters as soon as we make that completely available. And you'll become a member of the oldest radio ladies organization in the world. And you'll have a whole new network of YL friends and resources who enjoy the hobby as much as you do.
Thanks so much, Ann. And Nisi is in the chat room. I thought I would mention that to you. And she said, you can also follow us on Instagram, and you also have a big presence on Facebook. Isn't that correct? You guys post a lot on there.
Yep, Facebook, we have the YLRL. It's actually spelled out Young Ladies Radio League. We have 2 Facebook pages, one that's a little bit more of a formal and one that's a little more informal. And then there's also, in conjunction with the Nets on Thursday night especially, there's a YL Ops group, and there's a YL Ham Radio Operators chat with that. And that, again, was real active when we had that YL Day of the YL contest where people were spotting each other and meeting each other and making skeds. And it gets to be a real active group. Sometimes there's a lot of ladies on, sometimes it's a little bit quieter, but you can ask technical questions. Just a real nice source of information and good way to contact people.
Very good. And let me just ask you kind of a follow-up question. This is due to 2020 being what it is. COVID came through and put us all on lockdown, and all of us stayed home. Did you notice personally an activity spike with the ladies once we all had to stay home?
I think
I've got
kind of.
back.
I noticed that the CW Ops, I know, has been saying that they've, on the CWTs on Wednesday, they've been having a lot more activity. The YLs, it's a little bit hard because there aren't a whole lot of us in the first place, so it's kind of hard to nail us down on the air. But overall, I've certainly been doing more operating, a little bit of FT8. This is, kind of a tail end of the contest season, so I've been doing that as well and just trying to make it a point of getting a little more active and being on the air.
Very good. And I think we have Val back with us. Valerie, go ahead.
Joy's living in the middle of nowhere. There's a storm heading this way. It's really close. I don't know why it would knock out our internet, but I'm back. Thanks for being my wingman, Amanda. And also, I don't know if you mentioned, did you guys go over the Canadians? If any Canadian YLs want to join, can they become a YLRL member?
Yep. They can become YLRL members, and U.S. members can actually be members of the Canadian group, which is called CLARA. It's Canadian Ladies Amateur Radio Association. And I'm actually a member of both. And they're kind of a similar organization to us, but they are separate, but they have a newsletter and they have conventions. I actually went to their convention, their 50th year birthday bash in Winnipeg in 2018. And was the first time I had been out of the country in probably about 40 years. And I didn't know how much anything cost or what temperature it was and how fast I was driving the rental car. So I was kind of out of my element, but it was just a wonderful, wonderful week.
It's sometimes good to get out of your element. Well, thank you so much, Ann, for joining us. Appreciate that. You guys out there, really, if you're a YL in this hobby, please join YLRL just for the scholarships alone to get the young YLs, the YYLs in the hobby. So hopefully you will and join us all in being members of the YLRL. So appreciate it again, Ann, and thanks for coming on, okay?
Okay, thanks for having me. And you don't have to be a YYL for the scholarships. As long as you have a license and going to college, you're okay.
Thanks again. And right now, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Icom.
Get out and be active with Icom's new IC705 and its optional multifunction backpack. The IC705 is your perfect QRP companion as you have base station features and functionality at the tips of your fingers and a portable package covering HF 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. This compact rig weighs in at 1 kilo or just over 2 pounds, with RF direct sampling for most of the HF band and IF sampling for frequencies above 25 megahertz. 5-watt battery operation with BP272 or 10 watts with a 13.8 volt DC supply. Modes include single sideband, CW, AM, FM, as well as full D-Star functions. A large 4.3-inch color touchscreen and live band scope with waterfall. Integrated GPS with antenna and GPS logger. Micro SD card for data storage. It comes standard with the HM243 speaker microphone, and it supports QRP and QRP-P operations. The perfect accessory for the IC705 is the LC192 optional backpack with a special compartment for your IC705 and room for accessories for soda activations or just a day in the park. Visit icomamerica.com/amateur for more information about this and all the great Icom radios. Icom invites you to enter weekly in the drawing for some great swag prizes like t-shirts and hats at icomamerica.com/HamNation. While you're there, you can learn how you could possibly win in the monthly grand prize drawing for a new radio. And for June, we've got a great radio. It's the Icom IC2730A VHF-UHF dual band mobile. Simultaneous receive with VHF-UHF VHF, or UHF. A large high-contrast display, rugged mill standard 810, and there's an optional Bluetooth board available as well, and free downloadable programming software. So go to icomamerica.com/HamNation after this and each episode of Ham Nation and register to win. And we've got a grand prize winner for May. The prize was the Icom ID5100A VHF, UHF, dual band D-Star transceiver. Tell me, ladies, who's going to get this rig?
Okay, drum roll. Now that May's over, we got our May grand prize winner. 50-watt touchscreen mobile rig, 2 meter, 70 centimeter, nice rig. And the winner is Kilo
There's my
Kilo
drum
Delta
roll.
7, Fox Delta Uniform, Chad Nelson. Congratulations on winning that radio. I'm joined now with Leanne Bulger, Whiskey 4, Lima Echo Alpha. Thank you, Leanne, for joining us. Now, full disclosure, Leanne, I know Leanne because we're in the Long Island CW group, and she is the instructor for the all YL CW classes going on. And I just had to have Leanne come on and tell her story because I'm kind of impressed when I saw her QRZ page. And she's so spunky and she's such a go-getter. I saw that you went from like 0 to general in one sitting. So how did you manage to do that? Did you take classes? Were you self-taught? Kind of tell us your story.
Yeah, I was mostly self-taught. I didn't know what radio was before I got into it, and that's a whole nother story that we can talk about if you want to. But the way I studied for the exam was by watching the technician class videos on the YouTube channel W4LEA. And after about 3 weeks of consistently studying, I was passing practice exams very regularly. And I thought, man, I have 2 more weeks, so I'm going to take the test, and I don't want to lose the information. So I started looking at the general. And I wasn't super reliably passing those tests when I went into test, but I passed the technician and they handed me the general packet. And I was also surprised to pass it. And then they handed me the extra test to try that. And I definitely bombed it all the way. So it stopped at general.
Yeah, that was hard. Yeah. That's a hard one. I know that. Are you an electrical engineer, or did you have a background? Which, no, you just one of those amazing women. There's so many amazing women in this house, this hobby. I'm so impressed. Now,
there are. It's hard to follow, Anne. That's a hard act to follow. It makes you wonder.
Here's the deal. You've been a ham, 5 months?
Yeah.
4.5? Yeah. And you're already a CW teacher. So, yeah. I mean, you have 3 young ones at home. I mean, how do you do that? I mean,
I ignore them. I'm kidding. That's terrible. My 10-year-old and 8-year-old, I bring them along. As far as I'm concerned, this is a learning environment, and we are really lucky. My husband is an 89 Delta, and you all can go look that up on your own in the Army. So electronics are very inherent in this house. So it's a fun adventure. They're interested in it. My 10-year-old's actually studying for his tech right now. And my 2-year-old, she's a lot like me. She's just along for the ride. She'll kind of go anywhere. So they're really good about giving me space and including them in my space. I guess that's part of how I study too, is if you can teach it, you know it. So if I can explain it to them, then I know it.
Good. Now, what kind of rig do you have? Do you have a station at home? Do you have an antenna and a rig now in this 4.5 months?
I do, because the day that I took my exam, my amazing club, I'm part of the Cape Fear Amateur Radio Society here in North Carolina. They latched onto me, and I did not shoo them away. So the day after my license came through, 3 of them showed up at my house with a club HF rig for me to borrow and a full 40-80 meter dipole that they also brought fishing poles for and strung up in my tree, and extra coax. So I was on HF making contacts with Italy within 3 days of my license processing, which was a total whirlwind.
That's amazing. And that's what is really great about this hobby. I have a quick story on that too. When I first got licensed, and I was trying to make the Milwaukee repeater, and I live near Lake Geneva, and they're kind of far away, and I was crackling a lot, and they're like, you need to get a beam, and I'm like, I can't afford a beam, I'm a single mom. And the next day I'm coming home from work, and there was a guy in my driveway unloading a 13 element 2-meter beam in my driveway, and he wanted to do it anonymously, but I caught him, and he's like, just don't tell anybody where you got it from. But it's so nice. That's what's nice about this hobby. People just help you out. And it's just a wonderful hobby. Well, thanks again. And don't worry, I'll see you this Saturday. She's at the Long Island CW Club. And our class name is? You want to tell them?
YL4CW.
That's the name of our class.
And it's great.
It is, and she's a great teacher, very patient. She's really good. And so any of you out there who want to learn CW, it's not too late to join. Just go to the Long Island CW Club, join, and let them, once they see you're a YL, you'll get an email automatically from Jennifer, who's really been organizing this thing. So we're having probably an average of 16. Does that sound about right in the class right now? Yeah, so... but there's 28 new YLs in the club. So feel free to come and join us Saturday nights, have a little glass of wine, learn some CW, have a good time. Thanks, Leanne. Appreciate it. Another great YL. So now
can I ask a question?
Okay.
I just have one quick question. So I know, Leanne, thank you so much for offering these courses to everyone that has become a member. Awesome. One more thing. Can you check out these courses later on if you missed out like I did?
Oh, that's a great question. We have not recorded them. We can bring it up. I don't think that's a terrible idea. But of course, the way the classes are set up, if you miss some, catching up isn't super hard to do. We only add about 2 to 3 new letters a week, so you can catch up from there. But that's actually a really good question to ask.
And then if you miss one of the classes, they have 35 classes every week. You just pull up the calendar, and pick another. You can join another. You can come and go in different classes as you please. So. If you missed one and you feel guilty, if you find a beginning first class, just hop on that one and you can learn the first 4 letters they're going to teach you or whatever, and then you can get caught up. But yeah, it's not that bad if you're coming in late. It really isn't, because she's a good teacher.
Very good. Thank you, Leanne, for answering, and that helps a lot. Like now I know I won't feel like I'm far behind if I decide to join in. So
no,
all right,
not
Valerie,
at all. Come hang out.
Yes. The more the merrier to me, always. Valerie, anything else you had?
No, your turn. Take it away.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Leanne. That was a great interview. Looking forward to those CW classes. I got a great guest this evening. We have Andrea K2EZ with us, and I'd like to take some of your ham radio experience, maybe the last 15 years, and multiply it by 20. And I think this is what this gal has under your belt. Andrea, thanks for joining us this evening. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you, Amanda. I'm doing fine. Glad to be here.
Oh, we're glad you're here, too. Now, we had you here for multiple reasons. First of all, because the VHF contest is coming up. I do believe it's next weekend. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. Next weekend.
Okay, so we're going to be showing off your Rover, and appropriately named Rover. It's a Ford, what, is it an Explorer or
yes, it's a 2002 Explorer.
All right. So we've got a ton of photos to go over that Andrea sent over for us. So we're going to actually start with her numero uno Rover, which was a Ford Bronco. I bet a bunch of you used to own these back in the past. Jeff, you ready to go through those slides?
There we go.
That's an old Bronco too. One of my favorite vehicles, and I went on it I call it an accidental road. I was just going on a road trip, and I heard there was a VHF contest, so I put my VHF sideband equipment in the car and those little horizontal dipoles on the back of the car, and that was kind of it.
How did you get into roving? How was that a deal for you?
Well, like I said, I was going on the road trip, and on that trip, I decided to, with the contest, put the equipment in the car because it's a little easier than HF, and I did have HF in the car. So I thought I'd give it a try. And so that's the bug kind of bit me when I was doing that. Now, this picture right here, it's one of the few pictures of the car on the road because I'm always driving it, but occasionally somebody takes a picture and it gets forwarded to somebody else that ends up to a ham that I know. This is what I call Rover Mark II that went on the highway there, and it just had that mast in the back. And I always say when I put that mast on there, I looked up and thought to myself, I'm going to die of embarrassment here. But I got over that. So, and this one up right now is Mark III, and this is Mark IV, which added the Yaggies on the front. And you see I'm standing on a wall there. When you go work on the car, you either stand on the roof or you back up to something and you stand on it. That's if you don't have a step ladder.
And then I think if we cruise through a couple more of these photos, we have one with kind of a diagram pointing out all the different antennas. And that's when I'm dying to go over. So
this is
go ahead, point it all out, sister.
Yeah. So this is what I call Mark V of the Rover here. And the big difference from the last picture is 2 more Yaggies. So starting at the rear of the vehicle, I've got a 6-meter horizontal loop on top of that rear mast. On the front edge of it, I have stacked 2-meter horizontal loops. And the loops are just like a vertical whip, omnidirectional, except it's horizontal polarization, which for sideband is what you want to use. On the trailing end of the mast, I have 1 1/4 meter stacked horizontal loops. 1 1/4 meters is 222 megahertz band. And then on that cross piece, you see 2 loops that are kind of standing up. They're 70 centimeter loops, and they're bidirectional. So one of them gives me a broadside pattern in the car, right or left, and the other one gives me a front-rear pattern. Moving up a little further on the car, I've got a 2-meter 5/8 wave whip, a 6-meter vertical quarter wave, 1 1/4 meter 5/8 wave, a 1 1/4 meter quarter wave, because I actually got 2 FM rigs, and these are all just the FM antennas in this position. They're kind of pushed back from the HF antenna because as they whip around, as the name whip infers, they change the tuning of the HF antenna. So, and then in the middle of the car, I have a Tar Heel Model 100 on the roof. The whip would be about 18 foot high. So I took a torch to the whip and bent that back and tied it down. It doesn't change the pattern a whole lot. All the things on the car probably does some weird things to the pattern, but it's very efficient up there in the front. And then as we get to the front part of the vehicle, that whole mast rotates. There are 7 Yaggies on there, all of them 6 feet long, center mounted. They're slightly modified to fit within this footprint. At the top, there's a 2-meter one. Below that's 1 1/4 meter. It's a little hard to see it because it kind of falls in line with one other beam, but the 70 centimeter beam is nested below that. And then I've got loop Yaggies, one for 33 centimeters, which is 902 megahertz, one for 23 centimeters, which is 1296. Directly above the 1296 one, I have one for 13 centimeters, which that's the one that's kind of in line with the 70 centimeter Yaggy, and that's 2304 megahertz. And finally, a 9 centimeter one, which is 3456 megahertz, which is a band that may be going away. So that's the rundown on the antennas there.
Nice. So let's talk about what you have, and go ahead and continue on there, Jeff. Thank you so much. Let's talk about what you got going on the inside.
Okay, this is the back seat, the upper portion. In the upper left-hand corner is a bunch of coax switches. I have a remote that lets me select different switches. Certain rigs go to multiple antennas. A lot of rigs are dedicated. To the right of that, there's a flex 6700, which is what we call as an IF for the transverters. I also use it for 6 meters FT8, and I can do 2 meters FT8. I can use sideband for that as well, but I find it easier just to switch rigs to go to sideband. The little thing between the antenna switches and the flex radio is an amplifier for 2 meters. The flex radio only has a 5 milliwatt output, and that amplifier will bring it up to 70 watts. And then down on the platform there are transverters. On the far left-hand side is a 1296 transverter, and that converts the 1296 megahertz down to the 2 meter band. So I tune the radio on 2 meters. Right next to that, there's a little switch, and that's select switch transverter that is active at the time. And then I have to look at it. There's 1 watt out on each of the next two. One of them is 2304 megahertz, and then 3456 megahertz. And as to the right of that, we got the 902 megahertz transverter that also covers 903 with a small amplifier, and that's 10 watts. The 1296, I think, is 30 watts there. And you just see a little bit in the lower left-hand corner fire extinguisher that I carry in the vehicle. I did have a minor fire once, a small wire that I should have been fused, shorted out and kind of smoked. I had RIA N2RJ in the car at the time, so we disconnected the power and that was it. But so now I carry fire extinguisher.
Very good. And go ahead, Jeff, there you can continue on. I don't have the cool CW key like Val does to tell you to move on. Apologies. Let's go ahead.
So this one's just looking a little further underneath, and you can see the VHF amplifiers underneath the transverters there. There's 90 watts on 70 centimeters, 100 watts on 1.25 meters, and 160 watts on 2 meters. And in the lower left, you see a little red and yellow container. That's a kitty litter container. There's a battery in there, and that handles the peak currents because you can't see it on the floor, but I have a 500 watt HF amp. And so for the peak currents, I don't want those going back to the alternator. The alternator's factory, but it's good for 140 amps. But this handles the peaks there.
Okay, moving on here. Let's see if we can see your rigs somewhere in there. There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Wow,
so
look at that setup, everybody.
The front seat. And if you haven't guessed, it's kind of hard to fit anybody else in this vehicle. In the top center is a Surface Pro tablet, which lets me run Smart SDR for the Flex radio, and I run FT8 WSJT on that. That's not something that I can really do anything mobile on. I do have the Flex control directly below, which lets me adjust frequency, and so when most of the time I use this with the transverters, and so I just, between the switch in the back and this control, I can dial my frequency, and the pan adapter lets me find stations easier because frequency accuracy is really poor at those higher frequency bands. I'm not a GPS locked. Directly below that to the right is my FT736, which dates back to around 1990, and I use that for 1.25 meters and 2 meters voice. And you see that below that, a control head for an IC7000, which right now is my 70 centimeter rig. It's my backup 2, my backup 6, my backup HF. And to the left of that is the FT450, which is my primary 6 meter rig and primary HF rig. And on top of that FT450, you'll see a somewhat old classic straight key, which is my grandfather's key. He was never a ham. He wanted to become one, but that key dates back to the 20s. And it looks a lot cleaner in this picture than it really is. It has some paint overspray on it. It's definitely an old key, but it serves me well in the car. And you can see a little bit of the antenna rotator controller in the lower right there.
So obviously roving is your passion. Look at that nice QSL card. I wanted to bring up the fact that Andrea brought up something phenomenal to me. Why don't you talk to me about your 27 grid, 27 grids in one contest? Go ahead. Tell me about it.
That was that QSL card there. That shows the route, which was approximately 1,700 miles. I started the contest. Contest period is 33 hours. I was active in the contest about 28 or 29 hours with 4 hours sleeping. I started a contest in Pennsylvania and finished in Texas. So I went through Ohio, some parts of New York State, some parts, there's Val, down through Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and into Texas. And I covered 27 grids, which I'm told is a record number of grids activated in the contest. There's some rumor of someone unofficially having activated more, but that was never submitted.
Congratulations. When she told me 27 grids as the biggest record, I couldn't believe it. Anyone else that does VHF records, if Gordo was here, he would be bravoing you to the end of time. All right, so one other thing I wanted to talk about with you, and you were a big National Parks on the Air activator. You activated, what, 67 different national parks or multiple?
I meant to look it up, but I don't remember what the number was. It was 67 or maybe it was 90. I was the second highest activator in New Jersey.
Amazing. So were you doing that down? Now, if you guys don't know about Andrea, she travels back and forth between Texas and New Jersey. New Jersey is her home. Texas is her workplace. So she's all over.
Home with quotes.
Yes, home. Texas is her second home, basically. But we haven't heard that twang yet. We're waiting for that. Anyhow, so she does get out a lot to these parks. But go ahead, tell us about your National Parks on the Air, which everyone remembers from 2016. It was a really fun adventure for a lot of us and got a lot more people back on the air. So go ahead with that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had a wonderful time with the event. I had HF capability in the car, and I was doing a lot of mobile operation, and I decided to go out to some of the parks that were near me in New Jersey, and it was a lot of fun being a special event station and attracting, having stations chase after you. So I started activating the parks. I went to a bunch in New Jersey, some in New York. I actually went down and visited my dad in Tennessee and activated some in Virginia. And I was real appreciative of some of the chasers who stayed up to 2 a.m., 3 a.m., even 5 a.m. when I hit some of those parks because I was just a different time. I went to a couple in Texas where I had a completely different HF setup, but I had an antenna I could take portable. So I had a wonderful time. It was nice seeing the parks. I think one of the most memorable activations, or certainly the most emotional, was Flight 93. And when I turned in, I get choked up on this, when I turned into that park, I was very emotional, and it was my only time to that park, and I had seen the memorial and everything. It's very it's hard to talk about, just remembering all that. So
absolutely.
I had a wonderful time with National Parks on the Air, and I hated to see it go when there was. I didn't do a lot of chasing, but when certain ones activated, like Statue of Liberty, I drove up to the waterfront so I could make sure I worked that station. I had practical line of sight to them. I could see the statue from where I was parked.
Wow, I know I chased a lot of those parks, and I had a blast doing it. First of all, just all the challenges of everybody being portable was amazing. Like, you had to use all of your skills to the fullest. You're not going to just use your home station. You've got to make things work. You got to figure out those noise problems, figure out interference, and get heard and get out. So thank you so much for doing all of that, because I have a feeling that some people only got a national park on the air because of you. So you're awesome. Well, one more thing I told Andrea, I said, we've got 3 points we're going to cover because I know we're going to go over time, but I can't help it because this one is so cute. I asked Andrea last night how she got involved in ham radio, and she'd given me a biography. And Andrea, I'm just going to let you talk about it. How did you get into ham radio?
Well, I think it starts a little bit before, what I had told you, when my father had his own business, and he offered me a summer job when I was 12 years old, doing technician work. And so this taught me a lot of basic stuff and kind of started me down that road into the technical field. And a few years later, when I was 15, he decided to go get a license. Something I later on found out was a personal challenge, because he never made Eagle Scout because he couldn't pass the Morse code. So his effort getting a license was actually to challenge the Morse code there. He invited me to the introductory class he was going to, and they had, a regular movie projector. It was down in a fallout shelter, which was kind of wild, an old civil defense fallout shelter down below the, I don't know if it was the EOC building or something like that at the time. And, after seeing the movie, he asked me if I was interested in continuing class. So I decided, I said, yeah. I thought it was kind of neat. And I was very intimidated by the Morse code, but they had that in the class. And it was a little bit of a challenge at the time. But we both got our novice licenses, and that was 40 years ago.
Very good. Well, Andrea, we're out of time, but we're going to have you back on because you have so many interesting stories. Thank you so much for sharing. I did have a picture of your cats. I didn't see that anywhere. Jeff, is there a picture of kitty cats? Just real quick. They're her fur babies, and she's missing them.
Sure.
There you go.
There they are. There's
we're animal lovers here on Ham Nation, especially Gordo, and he loves the cats. And these are, go ahead, it's Brownie, and I can't remember the other one.
The one on the left is Lynx, and Brownie on the right, and they're both Maine Coon cats. And Brownie's not quite full grown in that picture. We have two other cats. They're not really mine cats, but they're in the household. And Brownie always wants to be friends. And you can see in this picture, Lynx was laying down and Brownie came over and laid next to her. And Lynx is not particularly happy. And that's very typical of those two.
Well, they're adorable nonetheless. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it. And again, we'll have you on again because I love following your stories on Facebook. You guys, if you want to hear her adventures, become friends with her on Facebook. Just don't be creepy. All right. So 7-3, Andrea. Oh, let's go back over. Let's go back over to Val, who's got another great interview for this evening.
I do, and make sure you guys work Andrea in the VHF contest. Like they said, that's in about 10 days from today. So get the mobile in the log there. She's out on the grids. Yeah, I am joined today. Oh, you know what? Before I bring in my next guest, this is your go signal. Start putting those chat room in the chat room, those questions you might have for Dr. T. Because after this, we're going to go into Amateur Radio Newsline, and Dr. T will be live for your questions, and Amanda's in the chat room now taking your questions. So let's bring on my next guest, Michelle Carey, Whiskey 5 Mike Quebec Charlie. Welcome, Michelle.
Well, welcome. Thank you for having me on the show, and hello to you, Valerie, and everybody else on Ham Nation.
Well, I knew I had to have you on the show because you're very active in the hobby, and I just love it when there's YLs active in the hobby. So before we get into a lot of the things you're involved with down there in Fiveland, why don't you kind of tell everybody how you got involved in ham radio?
Well, interesting story. You know, growing up, there's always that one house. You know, it's the house that all the kids go to. For me, it was Judy and 5KUO's house. Her dad, George, and her mom, Barb, were my other parents, so to speak. George ended up with lots of kids, not his own. We all called ourselves George's kids. In fact, I married one of them. Any problem that you had could always be solved by heading to the rink, putting your skates on, and rolling around with George. He would help you solve them all. George was a ham radio operator. As kids, we used to go down there and play with this stuff when he wasn't there. But he used CW to communicate during the war back to his family. His father was a ham. His brothers were a ham. I even think his grandfather was a ham. Might have installed radios out of Fort Dix in New Jersey in the early days. Anyhow, during the war, he communicated with his family. In 2015, we almost lost George to cancer. And it was really bad, and Judy and I took it really hard. But he made it. And that next year, early in the year, he came to me and he said, "The club's having a class. You're going." And all I could say was, "Yes, sir." So I went to the class they had at SCARS, which is South Canadian Amateur Radio Society. And I passed my tech in general in one sitting, and then I passed my extra. It was the very next month I got my extra. George became a silent key in 2019, but before he passed, all except for 2 of George's kids had their license before he passed, and even one of his grandsons did. But I was hooked. I love it. I love to dabble. I would say that I like to dabble in everything, but I'm an expert in nothing. I like to get on the air of UHF, VHF, HF, Echolink, DMR. There's an incredibly great DMR net on Saturdays. Devora 4X4NW is net control. I also like building things. I just finished building a Ubitix radio, and it actually works. So, yay! I've tried CW. I've tried to learn it about 15 times, but, you know, working full-time, being in charge of District 5, it's just, time was not my friend. So I'm hoping to retire, and then I'm going to start it. So in 2018, I became president of SCARS, and in 2018, I was vice president. In 2019, I was president. So that's about it for me.
Well, that's a lot. Now, I know you have a very active group of YLs down there in District 5. So why don't you tell us about some of the projects and events and things you have going or had going and have coming up down in District 5?
Oh, sure. You know, the thing about District 5 is it's full of very active YLs, both in their own clubs and with the YLRL. And it's those ladies that make the district so fun. We try to get together 4 or 5 times a year. We have events, plus we have the Hamfest that we attend. This year it's been a little difficult, as I'm sure it has for everybody. But in February, just before the virus hit, we were able to, we had the Arlington Radio Club in Texas hosted the District 5 for a kit building class. It was led by our own Virginia NV5F and Rob W5WS. We did let the OMs attend this class. I even brought 3 of my grandkids. In fact, Aria is in one of those pictures. I brought two of my grandsons and 1 granddaughter and my granddaughter's BFF. We made a group purchase from 4 State QRP and built a small portable AM radio. the last 2 years, we've had YL weekends at the USS Batfish up in Muskogee. We do plan to be there again the second week in October this year. It's all YLs. We do have an OM from the radio club that is our handler, I guess you would say. But we set up antennas, we get on the radios, we get on the air, break bed with each other, but the YLs do all the work. And I will say this about having lots of YLs is there's always good food. In 2018, we were able to sleep on the sub, and there are stories if we have time. But in 2019, I don't know if everybody knows, but there was a lot of flooding up in the Muskogee area where the USS Batfish is, and it suffered a lot of damage. In fact, we're still waiting for FEMA to help out up there. So I don't think we're going to be able to get on it this year. We weren't last year, but we did pitch tents. Some ladies brought their RVs. Some went to hotels. So it looks like we may be doing that again this year, as long as the COVID lets us get in there. On that very first weekend of the Wild Batfish, we had one mother-daughter team. They were in some of those photos there from Texas. The daughter wanted to get her license. She read somewhere in a book about ham radio. So mom drove her to the classes, and she sat since it was pretty far away, she sat in the back of the class and waited while her daughter attended the class. Well, when it came time for testing, the club convinced her to go ahead and take her test anyway, and mom passed all the way to general. Neither one of them, when they came to the Batfish weekend, had ever been on the air. And in fact, they were a little intimidated. But, you know, YL's helping YLs. It always works. They got on the air, and by the end of the weekend, we couldn't get them off the radio. It was really exciting, and it was fun to watch. This year at HamCom and Ham Holiday, we were going to build a fan dipole antenna and make a ballon, but both of those events were canceled. Some of the ladies want to do it at the Batfish in October, but we'll see how that goes. Not sure. Yeah, there we go. In the spring of 2019, we got together at Susan K5NYC's QTH in St. Joe, Texas. We were calling CQ for the 80th anniversary of the YLRL. And let me tell you what a weekend it was. It rained and it poured all day Saturday. The only thing we were able to get on that Saturday was DMR, and we participated in the YLNet on Talk Group 955. But it was crazy. It really was crazy. She has like 80 acres out there, and the watching the storms come was crazy. I will tell you, the next night we pitched our tents, and the one thing you should never, ever, ever do is pitch your tent anywhere next to the chicken coops, because it was a very early morning for me. I wanted to hang a rooster by 5 a.m. I think that's about it. We do have, occasionally we get together at our club. We have a lot of YLs there, and those are some shots from meeting over at the Firehouse number 7 in Norman.
I mean, you guys, it's all I do is I'm seeing nothing but pictures going by of you guys just doing so much stuff. If there's any YLs out there that want to learn more about District 5 and the activities, what's the best way to get a hold of them? Should they contact you?
Yeah, they can contact me, or on the YLRL's page. They have a district page up there too. But my email is W5MQC@yahoo.com. It's also on my QRZ page.
Very good. And then I wanted to know, so you don't have the Batfish coming up this October because of COVID-19, or it's still in the air?
It's still up in the air. So far, we are tentative, and we have traditionally been the first weekend in October, and we have to move it to the second weekend in October because they moved the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon to the first week in October, and for that one, it takes about 110 hams. So a lot of the ladies are either running in the race, myself included, or they're providing communication for the race. So we didn't want to compete with the Memorial. I think we'd lose just because people are very dedicated to the emergency operations. So, and maybe, just maybe, if they have Hamorama, we might be able to go there. So we'll see.
Well, I know. Is Hamcation still up in the air, or has it been canceled, or is it a go?
I don't know about Hamcation. HamCom and Ham Holiday.
I'm sorry, Ham Holiday. Ham Holiday.
Yeah, it's canceled. Well, let me rephrase. It's going to be Zoom.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was at 2 years ago. I think I was at that.
Yes.
Got to meet Leah, who was organizing it, and
yes.
Yeah, a lot of active YLs down there. It's pretty amazing. Now, I also want to congratulate you. I know you're a member of SCARS, which is South Canadian Amateur Radio Society.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you, it's not Canada. It's a river in Oklahoma, or is it Oklahoma?
Yes, it's a river that runs straight from Canada all the way down through. So,
well, SCARS, that club, they won Dara's Hamvention Club of the Year this year. So congratulations. So what kind of activities does SCARS have? Because it looked like some of those activities were mixed in with some of the photos I was showing. So it looks like they have some YL activities just right at SCARS, right?
Yes. Well, let me first tell you, we have about 170 members on the rolls. We have about 70 people will come for the club meetings, and about 30, we have club meetings the second Saturday of every month, 9:00 for anybody who wants to come. But every Tuesday night, we have what's called Elmira nights. So if you have a problem, you can solve a problem, or you just want to visit with people, come on out. Although during this COVID thing, it is in Zoom, and they have breakout rooms set. So if you need help programming radio, you don't know how to do something, you want to get on HF, whatever your problem is, whether you want to reformat a computer, you want to take, we even had at Elmer Night, we had CW classes. So it's just anything goes, bring it. And people will bring in all kinds of stuff. We'll build antennas. This is where I learned how to make and build a fan dipole antenna. And it's just a lot of fun.
Now, with it being Zoom now, do you have to live in the area, or are you getting a lot of new members who aren't even in the area now that you're Zooming?
We have always had members that are not in the area. In fact, our newsletter, which goes out every week, we have over 1,000 people 1,000 ham radio operators that goes to. And we have people, that since we're right off I-35, there are people that will come. They will, because they're driving up the road and they see us and they'll stay. So, it is what it is. We have a lot of fun. And I will tell you that. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, the club members, especially the retired ones, not us working ones, every single morning, except for Sundays, they get together at a local McDonald's and they meet. They just sit and all have breakfast together every day. But since the COVID
I miss CQ Foods. Those are always so fun. Jeff, can you pull up the W5NOR.org website? Now, this is where you go if you want to learn more about SCARS. They won Club of the Year for a reason. They have a lot going on. So if you want to join them, you would go to, there you go, Whiskey 5 November Oscar Radio.org. And you can learn more about joining SCARS. But it's amazing. I mean, it's just crazy, all the things they've got going on. Really nice first-class club. You're very lucky to have a nice club like that near you.
Hey, I'll tell you, one of the most fun things, I wouldn't say the most fun things because we do a lot of fun things, is, we're right close here to OU. And that is, it brings us talent and back and forth. We have a lot of members that are old hams and bring a lot of knowledge with them. But then we have a lot of talented people with other skills. So during the eclipse last year, the astronomy club got together with the radio club, and the astronomy club used the telescopes to take pictures of the eclipse, and then the club sent them out over slow scan TV.
Very cool. Very cool.
It was awesome.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I mean, you're one of those YLs that everybody can look up to. I'm just amazed at how active and how many wonderful hams there are, and you're in that group most deservedly. So thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate all you're doing to promote the hobby, and hopefully we'll have you on again sometime soon.
All right, sounds good.
And now let's hear from Amateur Radio Newsline.
From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2222, these are the Ham Nation headlines for Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. Our top story this week is the bankruptcy filing by Hytera Communications America, whose DMR radios were the focus of a $765 million lawsuit by Motorola Solutions.
On Thursday, May 27th, the longtime rival of Motorola filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. In February, the federal jury in Chicago awarded Motorola damages based on their successful arguments that Hytera America engaged in copyright infringement and trade secret theft in the production of its DMR radios. The jury award included $345.8 million in compensatory damages and $418.8 million in punitive damages, the maximum amount Motorola had requested. Motorola also announced it would seek a worldwide injunction against Hytera's further production of radios using the stolen trade secrets. Hytera described its filing as a routine financial restructuring relating to the litigation as well as the pandemic's impact on business. A report in the Critical Communications Review added, quote, Hytera is confident its operation will remain viable in the American market after the restructuring process is completed.
Newsline's Paul Brown, WD9GCO, reporting. The COVID-19 pandemic has claimed another amateur activity. A major amateur radio retailer has canceled its HamFest, scheduled for Saturday, August the 8th.
The COVID-19 pandemic has claimed another amateur activity. DX Engineering has canceled its HamFest scheduled for Saturday, August the 8th. Tim Duffy, K3LR, DX Engineering CEO, explained.
It became abundantly clear that trying to maintain the CDC recommendations for social distancing and knowing how hams like to touch various radio equipment, it did not appear to us that that would be a prudent thing to hold, and it may not even be allowed in the state of Ohio, depending upon how large a group. We felt with people making plans, to drive and things like that, we would get out ahead of this.
DX Engineering has a showroom located inside Summit Racing in Talmadge, Ohio. Plans are moving ahead with the resumption of their HamFest in 2021. Reporting for Amateur Radio Newsline, this is Phil Thomas, W8RMJ.
You don't need to be in a crowded venue or even beside your teammates to enjoy this next event. It's the 100 Watts in a Wire Tune-Up.
The 100 Watts in a Wire podcast is encouraging hams to try a new take on social distancing by participating in its next activity as part of a virtual team. Tune-Up, which is an activity, not a contest, will be held on June 12th through June 14th, and the teammates' locations can be scattered across the map. The tune-up is designed to provide an opportunity to test out emergency communication procedures, much as the annual YLRL field day does. The rules are basically any brand, any mode, any time, although it's preferable to activate a portable operation. If you can't do that, operate from your shack with no more than 100 watts of power. Just get on the air. Here's the exchange: your call sign, your 100 Watts in a Wire ID number if you have one, your state, province, or DX country, and a true signal report. For additional details, visit 100wattsinawire.com. That's 100wattsinawire.com. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Kevin Trotman, N5PRE.
The nominating period for the Bill Pasternak WA6ITF Newsline Young Ham of the Year Award has ended. The nomination packets are now in the hands of the judging committee, and once they make their decision, we'll announce the winner. We'll present the award at the Huntsville Hamfest in Alabama Saturday, August 22nd, and we hope to see you there. And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at arnewsline.org. With Paul Brown, WD9GCO, Phil Thomas, W8RMJ, Kevin Trotman, N5PRE, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW. 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation.
Thank you, Don, for that report. Oh, gosh, you guys. So this is the moment you've been waiting for. We have our celebrity guest for this evening. We have Dr. Tamitha Skov. Dr. T, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. You guys treat me so well. I just do weather. I'm just a weather girl. I mean, what's the big deal?
It's not true. Not true. Well, hey, I think you have a great forecast ahead for us, right? You do, right? Good forecast. Good mojo. We're going to have some.
Lots of sunspots.
Well, yeah, actually, it is a good forecast from the point of view that it finally looks like the sun is beginning to wake up. My goodness. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to the bands. Anybody been on the bands recently? Has everybody pretty much just given up? I mean, I wouldn't blame you if you have, because it's been so dead, right? Well, not back on the 29th, and maybe not even since then, because I don't know if anybody, whoever has actually been on the bands, they may have noticed a bit more noise on the bands recently, a few little whistles and farts that don't sound like it's coming from their rig. This is actually the sun waking up. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, because it's actually getting very exciting. Excuse me, I've got a little, I'm so excited, my throat is getting clogged up. Okay, so staring at this big ball of fire behind me, take a look at this. You see this region up here, and I'm going to try to point to it on my little green screen here. This is region 2764. Now that it's gone Earth side, it's kind of died down. Whoops, let me make sure my hand's pointing in the right place. It's kind of died down, and I'll show you a far side image of it where it was actually being a lot more active and giving us a lot more fun. But this region actually fired off 2 M-class flares, the first M-class flares we've seen. These are big flares, the first ones we've seen in this solar cycle. This is a new region, a solar cycle 25 sunspot. You can tell because it's high latitude. And now that it's Earth side, it's fizzling out. It's no longer considered a sunspot. It's just a plage region, but it is giving us a little boost in the solar flux, which is nice. The real player right now is going to be coming around the disk on this side. This is on the east side. This is region 2765, and it is still very active. Now it's beginning to quiet down, but you see as it rotates into view here, you can see all the little jets and plumes it's been firing. It's also been firing solar flares and solar storms. So we've got multiple regions that have been very active recently. This one is also going to boost the solar flux and keep us in the low 70s for solar flux over the next couple days. And if I flip to a different view, you get a little bit better idea of what this puppy looks like. Look at this baby go. See all this activity? When was the last time you saw something that beautiful with all this fire and brimstone happening? It's a gorgeous region, and it's actually quite magnetically unstable as we're watching it rotate into view. It's kind of hard to tell yet because it's still on the east limb. But if it is as unstable as it looks, then we aren't out of the woods when it comes to solar flares. Well, we could begin to flare up again. It all just depends upon what this little guy's going to do. Now, on top of that, if I get out of the way, you can actually see we've got a couple remnant coronal holes that are right in this area. They're not very bright, not very dark, you can see. They're kind of closing up. But these regions are going to cause some disturbed solar wind, easily starting in the next day or two, and probably in through the rest of the week. It's going to be a bit sporadic. Is that going to affect the ham bands? Probably not. It's really just going to keep us at unsettled conditions, most likely. Maybe a little bit of aurora at high latitudes, but probably not a lot to do some reliable auroral propagation with. So you're going to have to kind of just deal with that. And then let's see, if I flip to this is where it actually gets fun. This is the stereo's view. Now, this is stereo looking at the sun pretty much from the side. Stereo had really a front row seat when it came to all these regions. And if I can get totally out of view, you can actually see this. So this starts back on like the 30th. As soon as this thing starts over, we'll see everything reset. It starts back on like the 29th. And I want you to take a look at this region up here. That region, as it starts, I'm going to point over here because in just a moment it's going to end up resetting itself. And see how it goes fast. Now here it goes. Ready? Okay, there it's resetting right there. And now watch this region. I'm going to take my hand away. Boom! Do you see that right there? Did you see those flares? Did you see that? Those are solar storms being launched. There were 2 M-class flares. Then this region launched over here. And then we've got this puppy over here watch this guy. This is the region 2765 that we're watching now. This thing has fired multiple solar flares and solar storms, and so we're seeing it continue. And you'll see it get really busy as it continues to rotate to the stereo's west limb. And we have been seeing radio bursts. Stereo has been showing radio bursts coming from this region. See, look at all this activity. Boom, 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 boom. Starts really getting fun here. And so these high latitude regions are really the first set of serious actors that we have had on the sun that have to do with solar cycle 25, period. I mean, we may actually look back at this 6 months from now. The scientists may actually look back at this time 6 months from now and say, hey, I think at the end of May, right about when SpaceX launched their, the Dragon capsule Endeavour, and of course we had the lovely. If you live in the United States, we have the lovely rioting and looting. That's when Solar Cycle 25 started. So I'm sure I'm going to be dealing with a lot of conspiracy theorists over the next year or so, saying, "Hey, Solar Cycle 25 caused all this stuff," and that's going to be fun. But at least what it means is that the ham bands are going to start getting better. Solar flux is going to continue to rise. And here's how you know that. If I step off, let me see on this side now, this is the X-ray flux from GOES. And you can see back on the 29th, the X-ray flux just pow, pow, pow. Do you see all that? If you go up to about here, this is where the M flare threat level is. And so you can see you've got those 2 M flares right there. That is the threshold for radio blackouts. So if anyone was on the bands on the 29th, you probably heard a little bit of this. Now, luckily, things died down on the 30th. That's when SpaceX launched Endeavour. Good thing, because I was really worried the launch might be scrubbed, considering we had a lot of radio noise at that time. And everything's been pretty quiet until about the first and second, when you see that rise again in the X-ray flux. This is due to the radio noise from that region 2765. Now you can see it's really not doing too much. I'm going to stand kind of out of the screen here. Hopefully that's not too much there. You can actually see it's quieted down a little bit as of now. But because that region is so crazily active, I mean, so complicated. Look at this. Look at this thing behind me. If I can stand on the proper side here. Look at this. What you don't want to see are colors like red touching green or red touching blue. And so when you see that, you know that this is magnetic stuff. And when those different colors touch each other, it means they're very unstable, because you got a lot of magnetic field pointing opposite directions. This is the mess we're dealing with sunspot region 2765. So we're not out of the woods when it comes to that. So for the 5-day forecast, let me give you this really fast. And hopefully you can see. Yes, okay. I stand on this side, I believe, this time. Yes, okay. So for solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, like I told you, we've got those small kind of remnant coronal holes that are rotating in through the Earth strike zone. So over the next couple days, you're going to expect to see unsettled conditions with kind of a checkerboard pattern of active to minor storm conditions. It's because we're just getting kind of, little streams, little kind of puffs of fast solar wind that could cause a little bit of aurora, but like I said, probably not enough to do aurora propagation with, because it's going to be very sporadic. Now, down at mid-latitudes, we're also expecting unsettled conditions, but likely only about 10 to 15% chance of active conditions. As a matter of fact, at the end of the week, or the beginning of next week, is when we might see active conditions a little bit more, because a larger coronal hole will be rotating into the strike zone at that time. But most likely, it's still going to be reasonably unsettled, which means for amateur radio, it might actually help the bands a little bit. You might actually get a little bit better propagation because of that, but probably not much of a disturbance on Earth's night side. Now, for a solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook over the coming week, we do have 2 bright regions right now on the Earth-facing disk. That's region 2764 and 2765. 2764 is dying down now. That's why it's in parentheses. It's not really a sunspot anymore, because it's kind of fizzled out. It is, however, helping with region 2765 to boost that solar flux and keep it in the marginal range. SWIPSY is saying solar flux will stay around the 70s. I think it might be a little bit higher than that, but I'm just going to stick with their forecast for now. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed that 2765 will actually boost us into the low to mid 70s. We shall see. But as of right now, we don't have any risk for big flares. So no super big radio blackouts. Don't worry about that. Communication on the bands on Earth's day side should be fine, but just expect to have a noise floor a little bit louder than you than what you've been used to. And don't worry about it. It's not your rig. You don't need to go outside or climb your towers or anything like that. It's just the sun beginning to wake up. And that's about it. I think that's all I have for you.
Well, thank you, Tamitha.
Yep. You bet.
We have to talk about one of the elephants in the room here. Obviously, SpaceX. So did you have anything to do with that? Were you part of the team?
No, thank goodness. No, I do have, my company does, Aerospace Corporation. As a matter of fact, we have stood up an entire program office for SpaceX, basically because, the SpaceX has a lot of Air Force contracts. And so we have to make sure they know what they're doing. So the larger the office that you set up, I mean, the one thing that we know about aerospace, because we're kind of the technical arm of the Air Force, and we provide all of the expertise, the space expertise, to help make sure missions are what we call mission assurance. And what we always say is that the larger the program office we stand up, not only the more money do they have behind it, more is relying on it, but also the bigger the problems they have. So over the course of time, and this goes back, dating back to when the Falcons were just trying to learn how to land their rockets back on their ships, aerospace has been knee deep in it. So we have been behind the scenes with them for years and years. So a lot of the reason why they succeed is because of the expertise that we have. That the military is not going to let them fail. That's for sure. So yes, we have a huge arm that is involved in that, but not so much with the human spaceflight aspect of it. With Dragon, I don't think there's as many people working on it as we have really with the rockets and the other types of payloads that they've been carrying. But yes, a lot of what we do is directly related, and I'm sure that connection is going to become even more important in the future.
Absolutely. And but there's no denying, we're all very excited that it finally took off, and we got some guys into space and hooked up with the ISS. So that was all good news. All good news.
Yes, and the sun is celebrating right with us, because the day before the sun was lighting off the fireworks as kind of like a precursor to everything. So this will definitely go down in history as a really cool time that Solar Cycle 25 starts and Americans launch back on American soil again. It's really this generation's version of 1969, right? The moon landing.
Absolutely. All right. So this is an interesting question. NX0IA Dennis wanted to know, would you like to go up to the ISS on board the Crew Dragon or Boeing Starliner? That's really a loaded question. The answer is yes and no. I mean, Dragon is really cool. The touch screens, I don't know if any of you guys watched the launch, but being able to look over the astronauts' heads and watch them I was actually able to read the words on the screen, which was very amazing. And I have a couple friends who are astronauts, and they remember the shuttle. They remember having to take laptops up to the shuttle because the shuttle's electronics were so old that they actually had to have like these RS-422 buses and things coming out of cards in their laptops with these spaghetti wires hanging in and just plugging straight into the console in order so that they could control the new experiments and the new things that they needed to be able to control that the shuttle was not just incapable of doing. And there was no way to really upgrade the shuttle because of how complex it is and how much all the launch and everything, how much the avionics was, hard rigged. You just can't update that stuff very easily. You just might as well build a whole new capsule. So astronauts have been fighting that for, ages. And so to be able to see touch screens and seeing them actually at one point, I forget if it was Doug, I forget which one, I think it was Doug who took a picture. He pulled up his little iPad tablet and took a picture of the screen because the thermal imager was blinking and they didn't understand why it was blinking. It turned out that it was just trying to go through its stabilization process, and they weren't ready for that. So he was taking pictures of it, and it was so cool to see these touch screens and him holding up an iPad and touching the screen of the iPad and using that, or whatever, the tablet, using that to take pictures, then to send it down to ground control. I mean, we've out Star Trek as far as I'm concerned. So getting back to the question, yes, for that, I would love to be on Dragon. I wouldn't mind maybe taking a few laps around the planet. But to stay up there for very long, probably not, just because I know the weather. I know how hard it is up there and how harsh the environment is. And I'm not sure I don't think I'd want to buy a summer home there. That's a good comment. All right. Not to mention, you might miss some people at home. All right. Let's see.
Yes, my little girl would kill me.
Yes. Mom, mommy. And you'd have to take those calls on your iPad.
It'd be more like, Mom. 90 minutes later, Mom.
At least she could point you out every 90 minutes. Like, there she is.
That's true. There she goes. Here she comes. There she goes. Here she comes. Yeah.
And,
that would be an interesting.
It would be. I think for anybody. I worry about the weird things like going to the bathroom. I don't know about you, Val. I'm sorry. That's what I'm concerned about. So we can't let you go without having an actual ham radio question for you personally, Dr. T. So Don, WB3BJU, he has to know, are you talking on the radio yet? Are you making some contacts? Do you have a radio at home?
No, but believe it or not, and I'm not going to reveal who it was because they probably would not like me right now. I haven't asked. I would have to ask their permission. But in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, before everything got really crazy with all this, the Floyd, the issues with George Floyd and the sadness surrounding all of that, when it was just COVID-19, that was all we were worried about, and everybody was breathing in masks, even had their dogs wearing masks inside the house. I had a knock on the door, and I'm thinking, who in the age of social distancing would come in and knock on my door at this time? I open the door, and someone stands with a mask I've never seen before, and he goes, "Tamitha?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Oh my gosh, you do live here." And I'm like, "Yeah." he says, "I'm a fan of yours." Turns out he was with a friend. They both were wearing masks. They were both doing social distancing. He stood away from the door about 6 feet, but he braved COVID-19 because he managed to find my address and realized I was local to him here in north of LA. And he says, "Oh my gosh, we got to go find her. We got to go to her house now." So he and his friend came over to my house, and we chatted just at the front door for a little bit. And he said, "I've been on the bands for a long time." He says, we're going to bring over a radio. We're going to get you connected to the local repeaters, and so at least you can talk to the rest of Los Angeles and talk locally. So I now have 2 Elmers. I went from no Elmers to 2 Elmers, and I'm thrilled, and I can't wait for this pandemic thing to die down or the social distancing stuff to lighten up. Here in Los Angeles, it's pretty bad. We're locked down till July, at least, and maybe even longer. So we still have a little time to wait. But it looks like very, very soon I will be on the bands. And that is a promise I made to everybody anyway. I said I would get back on the bands when Solar Cycle 25 started, so that when people ask me, when is this solar minimum going to end, I can say now. It's easy. I have the answer now. It's over. I think we're through it.
Yay.
So yes, very soon is the answer to that question.
And I'm all right, everyone listening, watching, viewing later on, I don't care if it's tonight, tomorrow, next week, do not go to Dr. T's house. Okay. This was an awesome deal. But do not show up at Tamitha's house offering her more equipment. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. She just found 2 Elmers. She's set. She's set.
Oh, all right. My gosh. I didn't know if I should be petrified or unbelievably flattered, and I think I was both. But I think in the end, they even said, "Please, this isn't. We're not being creepy. We're really not being creepy. We just want to get you on the bands. That's really all it is." And I just, in the end, it was just very sweet, and we exchanged phone numbers and everything, and I mean, that's one of the really cool things about this community, is that even if you don't know each other, you're family, and you just automatically kind of like. Just assume you're family. I'm going to go knock on my neighbor's door because we're family, right? Why wouldn't they let me in? Why wouldn't they talk to me? Why would they think that this is weird? And it's very true, because it wasn't. There was nothing weird about it. It was just, I almost was in tears when they left, because it was just such a touching moment, and a time when everybody is trying to push each other away. It was such a moment of coming together. And that's, to a great degree, that's what amateur radio is all about anyway, right? So it was just very... in a sense, that kind of summarizes what amateur radio is, I think. I love it.
I agree. And we can't wait for you to get on the air, by the way. So we got that going for us. Valerie, what do you have for Dr. T?
I don't have anything for Dr. T, but I'm kind of verklempt and very happy tears that we're finally in 25. I've been waiting for this for a long time. I think it was like 2011, 2012. After that, it just kind of took a dive. So I can't wait. I'm very excited. This will be a glorious fall contest season.
Yes, October.
Right, the next forecast. Yes, the next the next forecast I do, I'm going to be going, okay, the sun is it's just so
it's
wonderful.
Beautiful.
Look at these
Man, that's beautiful.
It's just That'll be
I
fun.
think we will
should
see
do that
hams
just for
crying
Greg.
all over the place. They will be. You thought you had people at your house last time. I mean, you're going to have lots of them just giving you presents. They were just going to like lay them out on your lawn.
Yes.
You're going to have a garden
Right.
gnome.
I don't know what you did. I don't know what you asked of the sun, but thank you so much. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. The sun did it all on its own. Maybe we should thank Elon Musk, because I think if he hadn't launched Dragon Capsule, maybe the sun still would be quiet.
That could be a true
Said,
possibility.
"Great, humanity." Yeah. Finally, you get Americans back off on American soil. Finally, you give me a reason to wake up and take a look.
Oh my gosh, ladies, this has been a show for the ages. First of all, having so many unknown hams join us this evening, and known hams both. This has been spectacular. So, Val, you ready to wrap it up? I'll wrap it up, but are you ready? You have anything else?
Ready. Yeah, and I just want to thank all our guests tonight. Some amazing YLs in this hobby. I have not met a YL that's not one of the coolest women I know in this hobby. Really, if they have a ham license, I mean, they're just amazing.
Agreed all the way. I don't care how active you are, we're still cool. Right, Dr. T?
Absolutely. All of us.
Well, I consider her active.
Big time to be a YL.
Oh, I didn't mean like she's not active. I mean, actually, she puts out a forecast every week. If I get on the radio every week, I'm feeling good about myself. So, no, but we appreciate everything. And again, thankful for Dawn. I don't know how.
No.
I think.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing in there, but yeah.
This is worse than mask shaming. You guys are just you're ham shaming me. This is terrible. This really shouldn't happen between YLs.
Absolutely not. Nope. No judgment. First of all, you bring something to every ham every week that Val and I could never do, by the way. So, and you have cool graphics behind you to bring it with you. So.
Oh yeah, Son and I are like this.
You are. Again, I mean, and you're doing that like on a just real quick, like we gave you 3 days notice, and you're like, oh yeah, sure, I can just like set this stuff up, and I'll just like point out some things. And I did want to talk, if we had more time, seriously, I'd like to go over where the red was mixing with the green and how that was turmoil somehow. Yeah. I'd like to understand that a little bit better, honestly.
Right.
But,
you know what, we'll have plenty of chance to do that kind of thing, because as we get more of these sunspots that get really crazy and what we call the magnetic mixing gets these sunspots become a lot more magnetically complex. You can actually look at those, what those were called were magnetograms, and you can actually look at those magnetograms, and just by looking at where the different colors are, it's kind of like when they're really intense, it's red versus blue. It's kind of like American politics right now. Everybody's, the red, don't let the red touch the blue, or there's going to be, electricity going off and flares and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of that same kind of concept, is that if you have these colors that are touching each other, then it's very, very magnetically unstable, and the sun will want to reconfigure itself, and that can let off these really explosive flares. So, and big solar storms as well. So when the sun gets more active, we start seeing these really big sunspots coming around, you flip to the magnetogram view, and you can tell, looking at that sunspot then in those colors, you can tell whether or not that is going to be a bad actor, and that could actually make ham bands horrible, right? So you guys can actually become a little bit of, nowcasters in of yourself, or even forecasters in of yourself, because you'll have some ability to see, how bad these players are, really even before they fire flares.
See, and she calls us a ham, but what did she just do?
Yeah,
blew my mind. Wow. Okay. Thank you, Dr. T, so much for being here this evening. We really appreciate it. Again, absolutely. The audience, they love you. So let's go ahead and wrap it up here this evening. We've had some great guests on here. One of the best YL shows I think we've ever had. But Val, I don't know what we're going to do to top the next one, but I do think we need to start thinking of new titles. I do think that. All right, we've got some nets going on while we've been going over time here. So join us on 7192 for the 40-meter net, 14268 for the 20-meter net, 14 Charlie for the D-Star net, and 31012 for DMR. That being said, anyone have any last comments before we wrap it up here?
I have one. Is Jeff in the background? You're Jeff?
Jeff.
Amanda?
No, he's on our local repeater.
I was going to give him a hint.
Jealous. I'm jealous.
He's got to get one for you.
This anniversary gift, first of all, happy anniversary, my sister.
Thanks.
And second, yes. It's a very, very, very kind gift, and it's super shiny. And when you tell most people, I got the shiniest gift for my anniversary, they're not going to understand. I understand. I know what you're talking about.
They're going to think it's a ring. They're going to think it's a necklace. Right,
yes.
Well, I remember when I was first dating Jerry, my first Christmas with him, he gave me like some jewelry, an amplifier, and a heated coat, with a rechargeable, like Ryobi, battery pack in it. And it was a toss-up between the heated jacket and the amplifier. I'll tell you, the jewelry, So
it's not even a question. The amplifier, the amplifier.
It was a really cold winter.
All you have to do, though, is take your key and put it on a chain, hang it around your neck, and there you go. You got the best of all worlds.
All right, that concludes Ham Nation this evening. Thanks for joining us. Please join us again next week when we'll have Bob, George, Gordo, and the whole usual gang. 73. Take care. Be safe.
Check out other shows here on Twit TV, including my show, Hands On Photography. On this show, I'm going to show you how to get the most out of your camera, as well as be a better post-processor. So head on over to twit.tv/hop and subscribe now.